Who are these people? In this selfish society, they are altruistic beings trying to make a change. The volunteers serving at the Tiong Bahru Senior Center. They work tirelessly to help elderlies and they are pretty good at what they do. However, there is one serious problem. The volunteers are usually the younger generation who typically communicates in English or sometimes in their mother tongue, whereas the elderlies communicate in dialects like Cantonese and Hokkien. This difference has created a language barrier between the elderlies and the volunteers. Both parties cannot express themselves to the other, due to which volunteers cannot help the elderlies to their maximum potential. In order to solve this problem, we have created a one-of-its-kind card game, which will help bridge the communication gap between the elderlies and the volunteers. The volunteers will learn Hokkien and Cantonese, while the elderlies will learn English. The closing of this gap will help the volunteers in their selfless cause. Today, we feel honored to present amidst you, Bridging the Gap.
Now, I will be explaining about our prototype. On the cards are 3 languages, 2 dialects being Hokkien and Cantonese, and also English language. There are words on the front of the card for players to test their knowledge of the definition of the word and make sentences with the word. The definitions, as well as the translation, is on the back of the card so the players can refer to it easily. The definitions are in pictures to convey the message more clearly and so that the definition is easier to remember, as we tend to remember pictures better than words. There is also a QR code present on the card that can be scanned to access additional information on websites about government policies so that the elderly can further understand them. Cards in the game are also color-coded by a color strip at the top of the card to indicate the word class. There are 5 colors in total: red representing nouns and pronouns, blue representing adjective, green representing verbs, yellow representing preposition, and grey representing adverbs. In order to play the game, each team will comprise of 4 to 5 elderly as well as 2 to 3 volunteers. The volunteers will hold dialect cards to learn Cantonese and Hokkien words, while the elderly will hold English cards to learn English words. To start the game, the cards have to be divided according to the language as well as by word class. Players can then pick any card from the different piles. Players will then place the cards face up next to each other to form a sentence simultaneously. Players can also flip the card at any time of the game to refer to the definition of a word. After forming the sentence, players will have to read out the sentence in both languages.
To aid the players in recalling and applying the words and sentences they have learned from the card game, we have listed out suggested sentences for situations in which the volunteers and elderly are more likely to encounter communication barriers. These sentences are in the game booklet. The 5 situations we have identified are: Number 1. Food and beverages. As volunteers may need to provide light snacks during their sessions, therefore they will need to know the elderly's food preferences. Number 2. Actions. Because during their sessions, volunteers may want to teach the elderly how to play games, like Monopoly. Number 3. Places. So that both volunteers and elderly can refer to frequented places, such as the void deck and bus stop. Number 4. Emotions. Because the elderly may need to express how they are feeling to show that they enjoy the sessions, or to convey problems that they are facing so that the volunteers can help them. Number 5. Government policies, so that volunteers can more easily tell the elderly about government policies that are applicable to them and keep them up to date. The game booklet also contains the rules of the game in both English and traditional Chinese for easy reference by both the elderly and volunteers, a section with general differences in sentence structure and grammar rules between Chinese and English, and resources on how to pronounce the Hanyu pinyin.
Our card game is simple, easy to understand and play, and facilitates learning in the best way possible. With relatively simple and little rules for playing the game, as well as visual clues as part of the definition and playing, our game allows parties who may not be familiar with each other's languages to still be able to somewhat understand the game and thus play with each other. Through it, they will be able to learn some words in each other's languages, effectively overcoming the language barrier and bridging the communication gap. Apart from that, each card also has dual sides, one side with the language they're supposed to learn and the other with the definition of the word in their own language, allowing the elderlies and the volunteers to understand the word on the card and thus be able to learn that word. Moreover, In order to make it easier for beginners to play this game and make use of it to learn the other's language, we've also sorted the card into word classes, as represented by the colour at the top of the card, where each colour marks the card as part of a certain word class. This may help in forming basic sentences, as narrowing down to word classes may help them in finding the suitable card, as well as learn some basic sentence structures.
If you too want to surprise your grandparents with your conversational Hokkien and Cantonese skills, or if you are a dialect user wanting to communicate better with the younger English-speaking generation, then our card game is perfect for you. Currently, there are no other card games like ours that teaches Cantonese, Hokkien and English sentences which you can apply in everyday life.